Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Orange Visuals podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, our first person in the commercial real estate space, actually, Greg Schenk, the only exclusive title rep broker in Columbus, Ohio. Greg, thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we are very excited to share your story because you have a very long career in commercial real estate. And as you told me, you had a very interesting kind of like start into it. But let's first start off with you kind of ending off in high school. You went to Ohio State University. Did you have any goals in mind? Like, what am I going to do? What career path I'm trying to go for?
Well, when I got out of high school, I'd had a very tumultuous high school.
Hmm.
My dad left at 12. My brother passed away 2 years later. I had torn up a knee playing basketball. I thought I was going to be playing basketball at Ohio State, but I was fortunate to get the Evans Scholarship from golf, caddying, scholastics, and financial need. So that's
Hmm.
what brought me to Columbus. I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to be poor anymore.
Hmm.
I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I really didn't have anything. Came from a fairly small town, Sylvania, outside of Toledo. So I was glad I was going to be meeting a lot of new people, a new challenge. I love challenges. And that was the main thing. Can I get through it?
Yeah.
Fortunate to get the scholarship, not be a burden to my mother.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Was there like anything that drew you? Because you got a degree in marketing. Was there anything that made you decide to go that route? Or was it just like a good degree that could be used in a lot of stuff?
Well, that's pretty much it. It was the most general business degree there was. And because I really didn't know what I wanted to do, I had some family members in sales that I thought maybe I would do that. Since I was a big sports buff, I thought maybe I'd get into coaching or teaching.
Hmm.
Back then, they didn't pay teachers very well at all.
Yeah.
Coming from a very, poor background, I said, well, that's probably not going to cut it. So yeah, it was just a general business degree on that, and I figured that would probably be the best way to go.
Mhm. And then you told me that you left actually you finished it early because you were tired of being a student, and then you kind of have like a couple of gap years where you're out in Massachusetts and then California. Can you tell me a little bit about what you did?
Sure. So I wasn't tired of being a student. I was tired of being poor. So had very little money, and so I actually got out a quarter early. I put my last 4 quarters into three.
Mhm.
And when I got out of school in '82, the economy was a train wreck and there were no jobs in Columbus. And I really did want to stay here when I got out of school. So I took a job with a company that could have moved me anywhere in the US. And they were headquartered in the UK, and the US headquarters was outside of Baltimore. But they hired me not knowing where they were going to send me. I was a test pilot case for them. Being a marketing major, most of their people were very technical oriented. This company sold foreign car engine parts, pistons, bearings, and valves. So they sent me to Worcester, Massachusetts, one of their clients, and taught me how to tear apart engines and put them back together. Really didn't know enough about the parts to be dangerous. And this is someone that had never changed his own oil in his life, didn't like to get dirty. All my friends laughed basically and said, "You're going to get fired in a week." And matter of fact, I'll never forget going into the president's office, and the secretary had a piston on her desk. And I'm like, "What's that?" And she goes, "What do you mean, what's that?" "Well, what's this?" She goes, "You're not going to last very long around here," because I didn't even know what a piston was. So I really started from scratch. They moved me out to Los Angeles. I lived in a hotel for 4 months. I ended up moving to Hermosa Beach, a suburb right on the beach in LA. And I swore I was never going to move. 21 years old, for a great place to be for a single young person. And I set some high goals. And after going through that machine shop, the confidence that gave me that I could understand that really said, I can do anything if I put my mind to it. And within 2 years, I was their leading salesman in the whole country, not because I knew anything about engine parts, but I listened to what the customers wanted. We
Mhm.
didn't have a local warehouse in LA, and I got the company to open one there so people wouldn't have to wait to get their parts because everybody drives out in California. And once we get that open, our sales just went through the roof and really helped a great deal. Then after 4 years, I realized that wasn't my life calling. I wanted to do something else. I love golf. I had a short stint in the golf business selling golf equipment. And unfortunately, I was covering 8 states, and the travel was literally a different city, a different state every single day, which is really hard on you no matter how old you are. And one day I woke up after traveling about 4 months straight, and I did not remember what city I was in. I knew I was in Texas. I said, I'm either in San Antonio or El Paso. And I said, enough of this. I'm going to be 300 pounds and a drunk if I don't get out of this business, because literally it was extremely hard on you. So, as fate had it, someone out of the blue said, "Hey, Greg, I think you'd be good in the commercial real estate business." And I had never heard of even of the term commercial real estate. And if you would have given me 1,000 careers out of school, commercial real estate would not have been one of them. So, this gentleman that I'd known socially tells me this. I fly back to Toledo for a friend's wedding in the summer of '86, drove down here to Columbus, and had a gut feel that Columbus was going to grow. And I trusted
Mhm.
my gut, left my job, left a job with a company car, expense account, and a salary, paid myself to move back here to join the largest company in the country and go on straight commission.
Oh, wow, just
Well,
100% commission?
100% commission at 26 years old, not knowing a soul in Columbus, no business contacts whatsoever, not owning a suit, not owning a car, basically totally from scratch.
Mhm,
So I set two really high goals, and I said I'll give them 2 years to do it.
mhm.
And within those 2 years, I hit those two goals.
Can you tell us what those goals were?
Well, there was an income goal.
Okay.
And back then, 100,000 was a lot of money. It still is, but back then it was a lot more.
Yeah.
So as a kid caddying, I used to caddy for all these wealthy golfers, and I'd be seeing them pull up in their fancy Mercedes, taking off on a Wednesday afternoon. And I said, someday I'm going to have that. And all my friends would laugh at me. So I used to go down, walking down the fairway saying, someday I'm going to make 100,000 a year, have a condo, and have a Mercedes before I turn 30. That was the goal. So I used to say 100 condo to Benz like a million times, over and over and over.
Mhm.
Well, I did it by 28.
Darn.
That was a pretty big deal. Then I set a higher goal. Then I set a higher goal. And 9 years into the business, I did the biggest deal in the state of Ohio, which was with then Bank One before it turned into Chase. And that let me pretty much dictate my freedom. And I ended up leaving the biggest company in the country and going out on my own and starting my own exclusive tenant rep business. And it gave me a little cushion, because obviously starting anything new is very difficult. But basically left a 70,000 person company to go out on my own. And then to
Mm,
differentiate myself, I started speaking and teaching. I designed 2 courses for continuing education for realtors in Ohio, and it went so good in Ohio that I took it nationwide. And then I added commercial real estate market overviews that I taught not only to realtors, but to attorneys, accountants, bankers, all different types of professional people that wanted to know what was going on in the market. And then later on, I added financial literacy education, and I taught to both students and professionals, of people that were most of us were not taught that growing up, as well as investment property acquisition. So I really differentiated myself by keeping my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the market, reading voraciously every day, talking to my cohorts. I've got experts in about 60 cities around the US and about 100 around the world. We have a conference call every 2 weeks. So we hear the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's going on in every market and
mhm.
how that will affect my clients here in Columbus.
Yeah, no, that's a lot to kind of like just dive through. And I guess the one main thing that stuck out to me is that you're constantly thinking differently. When you were back at that sales job in California, you heard the customers wanting a warehouse kind of in the LA area, so you help open that up. And then eventually you move on to your job and then you think differently to get the biggest client. And eventually with your own business, starting the education aspect. What makes you think differently and bigger and constantly motivating yourself? Is it mostly just those goals of, "Hey, I need to make this certain dollar amount?" Is there any other like, do you have any mentors that were kinda like, "Hey, you need to think bigger," or like a coach or anything like that?
Well, that's a great question. I did have a very good mentor when I first got in the commercial real estate business, and he told me two things, and I actually made a podcast on this. If you try to earn before you learn, you get burned.
Mhm.
So he said, think about your first 2 years like going back and getting your master's. Build a solid foundation, learn everything you can. And if you do that, basically years 4, 5, and 6, you're going to take off. And that's exactly what happened to me. Too many people are so impatient. They want to make a quick buck, especially when the lead cycle is so long in our business compared to residential,
Yeah.
that they get impatient and they cut corners, and they never really learn the proper foundation and the process.
Mhm.
So that really stuck in my head. And then I studied every great motivational speaker and sales trainer there is. I mean, you name it, I studied it forward, backwards, inside and out. I took Dale Carnegie sales and human relations course training. right out of college. I won some awards with that. I took Toastmasters, but I listened to everybody. People would know the names Tony Robbins or Jack Canfield or Earl Nightingale,
Yeah.
Zig Ziglar, um, on and on and on. I studied every single one of them. I went to conferences trying to really say what's the difference. And the biggest thing was not selling anything to anybody, but helping people get what they want.
Mhm.
So Stephen Covey wrote a great book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. In that, he says, seek first to understand, then be understood, which
Mhm.
is very hard to do. Quieting your mind, listening without the intent to reply. That's another one of his very big things. So basically, hearing what's about you, your company's goals. Where have you been? Where are you now? Where do you want to go? And then I listen to that, and then I help you put together the plan to put that plan into action, whether that's renewing an existing lease, restructuring existing lease, or helping you relocate to lease, buy, or build a different facility or acquire an investment property. So that's really what's helped differentiate me from everybody else out there. I'm not selling anything to anyone. I'm helping companies get what they want.
Mhm. How do you structure that kind of? Because like, a lot of people say, "Oh, commercial real estate is more boring side, the slight safer side compared to real estate," where it's like you're dealing with people's homes and it's kind of like their dream home. It's like there's that motion of like owning a home. And then with corporate, a lot of people feel like it's more, I guess, muted. How do you help sell a vision like to a company of like, "Hey, this office space," or renewing or going somewhere else kind of?
Well, you're dealing much more with facts than emotion. You're
Mhm.
dealing with the current market conditions, which obviously vacillate on there. So in residential, I don't like this green carpet.
Yeah.
So a commercial guy is gonna tell you, "Well, tear the damn green carpet out." It's, immaterial, basically, okay?
Mhm.
The market conditions in commercial gonna be interest rates are here, interest rates are here, rental rates are here, rental rates are here, the cost of the build outs here or it's here. There's a lot of different factors that come into play, timing and your credit and what's going on in the market. So there's so many different factors, to do that, and if you don't have a plan you're
Mhm.
gonna fail. You're either gonna pay too much and go out of business, which you see every day for retailers or an office or whatever. For people that don't have a plan, if you fail to plan, you're gonna fail basically
Yeah.
on there. So it's much more complicated. It's much bigger numbers than someone buying a house.
Yeah. I'm interested, how was it in COVID for you kind of with your consultation business and now it's commercial real estate is basically illegal. Like you can't even gather together as a company. You're required to be staying at home. How do you advise companies during that time? Or what were you doing during that time?
Well, it definitely slowed down. Companies still did things, but they were really more on pause.
Mhm.
On there. And since then, really, it's been a lot of companies trying to decide, do we force our people back in the office? Is it a hybrid model where they're in 3 days? Is it a co-working situation where they're moving in to something like that? So there's no right or wrong answer. So certainly business was a lot more of a challenge. And I'm not going to get political in here, but some of the decisions were made really decimated our downtowns all over the country. Most of the suburbs are pretty healthy. Most of the downtowns are not healthy as far as the
Mhm.
office market goes. So
Yeah.
it's hurt a great deal. It's actually given me more ammo. Usually I can help people more when times are the toughest. So I've had
Mhm.
some of my best years and helped some of my clients the most when times are worse. That's when they really need an expert on their side to help them through their process
Mhm.
on there. So it actually was a good thing, for me, and I was able to help a lot of people.
Mhm. One thing also that you mentioned that I kind of found interesting is so you were talking about how when you start off the first 2 years, you need to have patience. Like you can't worry about the earnings before the learning. Like you have to learn first. How do you have the patience to survive like those months and years of learning where it might just be a all commission job? You still need to earn something, but you need to make sure you.
It's very, very hard. You live really low. You live very simple, okay? And
How's it for you when you started off, kind of?
well, the only smart thing that I had really done was I had a company car when I lived in LA, and the amount that I would have paid on a car payment, I saved that and I lived off of that for the first 18 months till I really made any money. Then
Mhm.
I hit enough larger assignments that made enough, um, to get me through it. But there was a lot of times where you went months and months and months.
Hmm.
So yeah, you're either living off a credit card or if you had savings, but that's also the barrier of entry why so few people do it. Any straight commission job, no matter what the industry, is really hard. But in real estate, if your typical assignment is 8 months to a year, if I start today, I get paid next May.
Dang.
So that really eliminates 99% of the people. So that's why there's so few people that do it. So you have to be extremely disciplined,
Mhm.
extremely detail oriented, all right?
Yeah.
And if you're not organized, if you're not detail oriented, you will fail miserably. And then of course most people don't have the work ethic.
Mhm.
So you have to be able to juggle a lot of balls in the air at the same time because you need to be working on multiple assignments. So hopefully something is going to close every month or every 2 months. If not, you're going to have a big gap
Mhm.
in what your earnings are.
What was your motivation kind of in the beginning when you're starting off with this commercial real estate space where it's not necessarily like something drew you there, like you knew people. It was more of like someone was like, "Hey, this would be a good idea." And you're like, "Sure."
It was a challenge. It was after you'd been on a salary job
Mhm.
living in LA where things were very, very expensive, a
Mhm.
lot more than Columbus. Um, Here I was the number one salesman at my company and I couldn't even come close to buying a house.
Oh, wow. It was even that expensive back then?
Yes. And interest rates were 17%.
Ooh.
So a lot different.
Yeah.
So I wanted something that I could control my own destiny.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to get out of it, what I put into it. I had a couple family members in the insurance business that had been on straight commission that had done very well. And I've got friends that are stockbrokers and other types things like that that have been on straight commission. But those are much quicker turnarounds. They're site. A stockbroker can get paid every week, an insurance person get paid every week. So it's a lot different than 6, 8 months a year, getting paid on something. But I liked um, the nurturing, the relationship approach is what I call it to business, and nobody basically capping what you can do.
Mhm. It was all up to you kind of thing.
It's all up to me. And there's nothing better than saying, nobody's going to outwork me. Nobody's going to go out and do more. And so if you set those goals and learn the things you need to learn, really yearning to learn, which I'm a voracious reader and yearn to learn, that's a great deal of it.
Mhm. Kind of with now how you started your own company, like this is the very beginning. How do you get your foot in the door for these bigger corporations? Because you've told me you've done for a lot of variety of industries, finding commercial real estate, advising them. How do you get your foot in the door as a small team? I mean, you told me you had some employees back then. Now it's kind of like a one-man show. How do you how are you able to get the attention of someone when you are kind of, I guess, small in a way?
Sure. So some companies are definitely afraid of that. And then you better listen to what's important to them. What's important to them in a business relationship? And I ask that question.
Mhm.
Some, they just are not going to feel comfortable with a small company. So I'm probably dealing with more privately held companies than public. I'm not really dealing with Fortune 500 companies. I've worked with them, but that's not my normal mode. But if I can get in to see a president face to face, he's a business owner, I'm a business owner. I've helped hundreds of other companies before. So I've done more real estate assignments than he'll ever do in a lifetime. So he needs someone that's a master of the market and a master of the process that he can trust to guide him through and then introduce him to other experts that are needed during this. So
Mhm.
typically, if we get in the door, we can educate them on that. And I'm fortunate that I've won every award you can win in business in the industry. I've written a lot of articles. I'm the only broker in the whole state that travels the world, basically speaking and teaching. So that's helped differentiate me from pretty much everybody else that's out there.
Mhm. How would you usually how has getting in the door changed from when you started your own company to now? Has is it the same still with
Oh no, it's totally different.
Oh, really?
When I started, there was no cell phones, there was no computers. So
Ah.
we were knocking on doors, we were going out, we were making phone calls. I gave out 5,000 business cards my first 2.5 years. So I could have run for mayor. I literally called on every building and walked through, but it helped me learn the market better than everyone. And I did a lot of assignments and got a lot of business from it that really paid dividends. The other thing I did is I joined a lot of charities. I worked with a lot of
Mhm.
leadership groups because I didn't know anybody in town. I didn't have any money then, so I volunteered a lot of time to help a lot of different groups, and I made some phenomenal connections that I'm still in contact with today, and got in with a lot of good private companies that have been great clients over the years.
Mhm. Yeah, and then one thing I'm also interested is kind of when you started public speaking, how did it work with getting people into the door, like, to even hear you public speak? What were you offering to them? Like, how did you figure out, "Okay, maybe this is what they would wanna hear about. This is something they would actually come out to," type of thing? How would that work?
Sure. So that was actually pretty easy. 90+% of real estate education is residentially oriented.
Mm,
So there wasn't very much good commercial education out there. So when I started my own company, and I really loved speaking and teaching before then, I had done a lot of volunteering. I'd coached basketball and some different things. Um, I knew I had the process for what I do in tenant rep really down pat, and there wasn't anybody else teaching it. So I came out with 2 different courses on that, and again, it went so good in Ohio, I took it national. I spoke for the National Association of Realtors. I spoke for about 4 or 5 other professional organizations.
mm,
And again, before webinars and podcasts and all that, flew to different cities and states, to do it, and I just got such good feedback from it, I kept expanding it. I have about 23 different areas I speak and teach on now. So it was really, again, listening to what people wanted. They needed to learn sales skills, people skills, entrepreneur skills, the market, the process, investment property, and lately financial literacies, because I believe everybody needs to be personally financially responsible, not the government doing handout types of things. So that's something I've just got a very good personal interest in doing it. So all these areas weren't necessarily my ideas. It was more listening to what the needs are
mhm.
for people.
How do you listen to people's needs? You keep on bringing this up. How do you get in contact with people where you're around them and you're able to hear their needs and understand how you can help them? Because it's like a lot of salespeople, they're like, maybe that maybe it's just an office type of job where they're behind the phone, they're behind the emails, and they're just typing away, calling away. What would your be recommendation for them to figure out their customers' needs?
Well, that is a really great question. The first thing is get the hell out of the office. So the big thing for me was I went to conferences all over the country. All right. And again, I'd hear other people what they're doing good at, what they're bad at, what they need help with. And you'd hear this, I'm out in California, I'm in Chicago, I'm down in Florida, Texas, wherever it may be. And you hear that. So if you hear it enough, you say, well, this might, and again, this is really before the internet, before podcast and all this kind of stuff. And then we started having conference calls and Zoom calls and things of that nature. And then, data gathering became more popular of what the issues, really were. But a lot of people never got good sales training.
Mhm,
They went to a company and their company promised them the world and never really did it. And they ended up competing with their sales manager. So I heard that from hundreds of people. So I saw right away that that was my need, that I could teach them a proper way to really, instead of sell, help people get what they want. I mean, again, a consultant advisory approach rather than a sales approach, what I call the relationship approach to business.
mm,
So that was something, early on I was really, really popular on. And I wrote a book about it in 2012, I believe it was. And that got very good reviews from NAR. So I gave that out a lot in my talks on there and just really expanded it from that. So it's really saying you're going to dedicate your life to studying the market every day, which I do. I mean, 2 or 3 hours every single day. I'm studying the market, and the fact that I own property, I'm looking at obviously the properties I have and partnerships around the countries, and I get the feedback from every property. I get quarterly reports of what's good, what's bad, what's happening in the market. That helps me educate my clients on, okay, here's what we need to do because this is what's happening now.
mhm. Yeah. I guess one thing is also how would you advise commercial real estate investors with where to put their money in? Obviously, now post COVID, the commercial real estate space is a lot weaker than it used to be. Companies are a lot more confused on what they should be doing, hybrid or even just fully remote. What would be your recommendation for commercial real estate investors that are trying to find properties that they could lease out?
Well, I wouldn't agree that it's weaker. It depends on the segment and the niche and the market.
Mm,
Some are strong and some are weaker. If you said the office space market, downtowns, without a doubt, but that's also a phenomenal opportunity for people with deep pockets.
yeah.
So when we talk about investors, we have two forms, by the way, on our website, one for tenants and one for investors that's free to use that basically gives them a template of everything they need. We want to go from a shotgun to a rifle, going from their general to their specific needs.
Mhm.
What's their risk tolerance is the most important thing. What's going to let them sleep at night? What's going to keep them up at night? Okay.
Mm,
You may be a 2, I may be an 8. You may be very conservative, I may be very risky, vice versa. If you're married, you might have the same thing with that. If you're in a business, you may have the same thing with your partner. You got to figure out each person's risk tolerance. Then you need to know the hold period. Is it a year? Is it 10 years? Is it forever? Okay. How much cash do you have? How much cash are you comfortable putting in? How much are you comfortable borrowing? How much is a lender comfortable lending you? Okay. And then most importantly, what's your exit strategy? Again, what are you
yeah.
going to do? And then do you have an expected return that you want? So there's a lot of factors. And then there's factors like, do you care what kind of property is or just what kind of return? Do you want it local so you can drive by and tell all your buddies I own this office building? Or you don't care and just say, all I want is the return?
Mhm.
So every property type is different. Every market is different. So you have to take in this factor. So I have some people that say, I only buy value add apartments. I only buy value add apartments in the Midwest. Some people say, I don't care what it is, just give me a 7% return.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very, very different. So if you ask me where are the opportunities today, well, that can really vary. Now in Ohio, we're pretty lucky. I mean,
Mm,
most of the markets are actually doing pretty well. Okay, except for the downtown office markets in almost every market in the U.S. That there's a big red caution, and mainly because people were staying at home, they didn't want to get dressed up anymore.
yeah.
And that's been hard for a lot of companies, and some companies don't have a strategy yet. So that gets back to where my expertise is, help them put together that strategy to figure out, should you be in the same space? Should you be in a smaller space? Should you be in a smaller space that's nicer, that may be more enticing for people to come back to the office? Okay.
Mhm.
Now there's phenomenal deals out there. We've got 40-year high vacancies for office space.
Yeah.
So it's very enticing, but the negative is the cost to build out that space, the interior is very high, and the landlord will give an allowance, but sometimes it's not a total allowance of what the cost is to build it out. And I've had several instances this year where that cost difference was so big, the tenant held off on doing it. Okay, so that's a big thing. So there's a lot of facts, there's a lot of details that you need to understand, and that takes time.
Yeah.
That's why if you don't start early, you're gonna get really hung up, and there's a notice period in the lease, and if you go over your lease, expiration, you can pay what's called a holdover penalty, which can sometimes be double the rent.
Sheesh.
So nobody wants to pay double the rent
Yeah.
on there. So if you start early, which for some companies may mean 18 months before your lease expires, but
Oh, wow.
unfortunately, most people procrastinate,
Mm,
even though it's their second biggest expense behind their employee's salary. So I say a small company ought to be a minimum of 6 to 8 months, and a large company ought to be 12 to 18 months minimum
mm,
to really get started with the process to do it right. Okay. And then getting all the records together. What's their credit? Have they been paying their rent on time? What's their head count? Where do they see their head count going? How many are coming into the office every day? Do they want to open up in a different market? They may have more opportunities, that sort of thing. So there's a who, what, why, when, and where. All those are on our questionnaire on our website. Again, one for tenants and one for investors. That can really help people make it easier to make these decisions.
mhm. You invest in commercial real estate, right?
Right.
When you're looking at properties and obviously because you know so much about the market, what do you look for specifically? What do you think does the best? Do you try to go after maybe those like inner downtown like office spaces that for maybe right now they're not doing so hot, but maybe you see something in the future, or what is your strategy?
Well, again, you're looking at what's my risk, what's my hold period, what's my exit strategy, what kind of expected returns I'm looking at. I'm 65 years young. I've been investing for about 30 years. So 30 years ago, I was investing completely different than I am now. I'm looking more on conserving capital and lowering risk than I am taking huge risk.
Yeah.
I've done some venture capital deals where I lost every penny. And it's pretty hard to put 100 grand into something and get nothing back.
Mhm.
But if you really want to hit it big, people that do that, sometimes they get lucky and they get 10 million back off $100,000
Have you gotten lucky like
investment.
that?
I've had a few very good deals, but not to that extent. On there, nothing on my venture capital type deals, but on some of my real estate, investments, I've had some very good, but I've had some very bad. So nobody and everybody's lying if they're telling you every deal goes good.
Mhm.
Every deal does not go good. But again, there's no right or wrong. It's what's your risk tolerance. So if I put some money into something today, my expected returns are different than they were when interest rates were 2% or 15%
Yeah.
on there. But I mainly personally invest in what's called value add apartments, which are 20 to 40-year-old apartments, mostly in the Midwest, but around the country, mostly long-term holds, which means 5 to 7 years on there. And we're making quarterly dividends if everything's going right. And then we get paid if we buy it right, we'll make some money when we sell the property, and there's very good tax situations, for that. So that's pretty much what I do. I've got some other things, but that's the majority of what I do. But what I do isn't as important to your listeners is everybody developing their own risk tolerance, their own strategies, what's going to let them sleep at night based off, if you got 10 million to invest, it's totally different if you got 10,000 to invest. But you have to start someplace,
Mhm.
okay? And the key is starting early and keeping it going and being consistent with it, which is something that I pride myself in that I've done really for the last 25 years of being very consistent of living below my means, not having debt, and every time a good opportunity came up, having the ability to do it.
Mm.
Okay. And that's really the crux of financial literacy is what I call paying yourself first. Every paycheck I got, I took 20 to 50% of that and invested it either in stocks or in real estate. Most people don't invest 5%. Most people have credit card debt or too big a house or too big a car or too much
Yeah.
crap on there. It's a really a different discussion, but for people that want to become financially independent, that's really the start.
Mhm. When do you get your mission kind of being focused on financial independency, where you're not focused on these material things, but you're worried about, hey, it may have taken me 12 months to get this paycheck, but half of it is going back into the business. It's not even going to me.
Well, I found out very quickly that material things do not bring happiness. And growing up without a whole lot of money, I had a lot of friends that had nice stuff. And of course, you're jealous, envious of seeing a bigger house, nicer cars, stuff like that. But really, the only big material purchase I ever did was when I bought this Mercedes that was the best one basically ever made. And I had it less than 2 years, and my son was born, and I couldn't put his baby seat in this convertible car and I ended up getting rid of it, and it really made me realize what's really important, in life, and that car was actually more expensive than my first house.
Oh, wow.
So, it was probably good that I got rid of it after 2 years, but I also haven't had a mortgage payment in 30 years. I paid my house off a long time ago, and that gave me the freedom to invest a little bit more aggressively, not having a house payment or a car payment, on there. So, the big thing for me, was no fear. Most people have a lot of fear of debt, and especially when you don't have a consistent income. So
Yeah.
brokers probably have the most inconsistent income, no matter how good you are.
Yeah.
It's up and down like that. And most people live too large,
Mhm.
trying to impress people that don't care about them.
Yeah.
Right. So I never really cared about that. My goal was to be able to do what I want, when I want, where I want, with whom I want. And
Mhm.
I'm able to do that. So it's very, very freeing. If I want to say tomorrow I'm going to Hawaii, there's nothing stopping me. And that's a great, great feeling. And today, with Zoom, with good cell phones, with internet service, you can pretty much do business anywhere.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, some people want to see you face to face. I prefer it myself,
Yeah.
but during COVID, it really proved, that you can really be 6 states away and still give great service.
Mhm. One thing that you mentioned is kind of with you as a broker, you have like one of the most inconsistent incomes compared to a lot of careers. Was there any fear kind of when you had your son? Like, I don't know if like I could fully rely on this career, or was it you're already set, you were already committed to it?
Well, my son's 21 now,
Mhm,
okay? Um, I had saved a great deal of money, and I was very, confident in my abilities. I
mhm.
knew I had a good work ethic. As long as I'm working hard, I had a lot of confidence in it, but then it gives you purpose.
Yeah,
If you don't have a why in life, if you don't have a purpose, you aimlessly wander, and that's when people get in trouble. They become drunks, take drugs, get heavy, um, buy stupid stuff because they don't have a purpose. Once you have a child, and I've been a single dad for a very long time, so it gave it even more. I owned an office building. I sold it. I worked from home for 18 years to raise him, drive him to school, coach his teams, things of that nature. That changed my life completely. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about him and giving him the best life. So when I sold my office building, I put all the money that I got from that into a 529 college plan for him, and he's got plenty of money for college.
yeah,
So that's one less thing to worry about. So when you live simple, under your means, don't have a house payment, don't have a car payment, don't have credit card bills, it helps lower that stress.
mhm, yeah,
And then if you're doing the right things, which hard work, again, most people don't know what hard work really is. That's 60 hours a week. That's not 30 hours a week. That's not 20 hours a week. That's probably 60 hours a week. And that means you better be really dedicated and diligent and detail oriented and disciplined. And you're giving up a lot of different things that most people won't give up.
mm. One thing I've always been curious about is with, like, social media now, like, there's a lot of people that talk about hard work, like, "Oh, I'm such a hard worker." But it's always interesting to hear it from the perspective of someone that's like, been successful and it's proven, kind of where it's not just behind a facade of social media. For you, what is the big, like, a week maybe that was your hardest working week, where it was like, "This is, like, my craziest week that I can remember," where it was truly hard work? It wasn't just, or has it been, like, consistently, like, I'm going after.
Well, again, I have very high goals. It really depends on people's goals. This isn't a business you get in to have goals down here. And again, most people don't even have written goals. But for me, it was probably when I started my own company and I would look up at the clock and it's 10:30 at night and I'd been working since 7:30 in the morning and I worked out of my basement for my first 4 years and there was no such thing as failure. There was no such thing as that. It was going to happen. And when you won some of the awards that I was fortunate to win, I mean even when my son was young, 2 years in a row I had a couple awards that were just phenomenal and I think it was being disciplined and being able to manage my time well.
Mhm.
We all have 24 hours in a day.
Yeah,
We all got to sleep a little bit,
yeah.
right? Hopefully, we're getting exercise. Hopefully, we're getting outside and seeing some sun. But then you're going to say, well, what am I going to cut out? Am I going to see my buddies or not? Okay. Am I going to go play golf or not? Am I going to take how many vacations or not? That's when the real think that. What are you doing Saturday? Well, I'm going to work 5 hours in the morning and then I'm going to go play.
Mhm,
So it really comes down to what are the goals? They're your goals, nobody else's. Okay. It's your life, nobody else's. All right. Yeah, you want to respect your parents, but once you're 21, it's on you. And how bad do you want it? And the people that want it, and I've met people that have done so unbelievably well. It's just inspiring that we're the only ones that limit ourselves.
mhm,
So one of the first people I ever studied, W. Clement Stone, said, "What the mind can perceive and believe, it can achieve."
mhm,
So if you only think you're worth $10 an hour, that's all you're going to make. If you think you're worth 1,000, you can make 1,000. And
mhm,
that's for really all the listeners out there. Don't ever put yourself down. Always speak in the positive. Always hang around mentally stimulating, uplifting, outgoing people. They're going to nurture you and help you become the best you can be in what you want to be passionate about.
mhm,
That's the biggest lesson in life. So what I wanted to do was to have the opportunity. When I was at a salaried job, I didn't have that opportunity no matter how good I did. When I worked for the biggest company in the country, I was giving them 50 cents of every dollar. And I took that 50 cents of every dollar and invested it instead of there. Now, was there a risk leaving the biggest company? Hell yes, there was.
mm,
Huge. I don't have a fancy Christmas party anymore. I don't have a secretary anymore. I'm not in a swanky office downtown anymore. But at the end of the day, that wasn't as important as what my goals were.
Yeah. One thing I'm curious is there a danger to setting goals too high where people set unrealistic expectations on themselves? Maybe they're just starting out and they put this crazy goal and then it might just not be possible because of their education. They just haven't educated themselves enough. Is there a danger in that?
Well, I
Or is
think
it
that's why it's good to have a mentor.
Mm,
And we also have a think tank group. So I have 10 guys around the country. We all left the biggest company about the same time. So we're in different markets, and we would have a conference call every 2 weeks, and we'd meet once a year, and we would talk about stuff like this. So, for example, I go to Miami for the winter, and the office space costs 5 times as much down there,
yeah.
which is insane in my mind. But I have to do 5 leases here for every one I would have to do there. Now, does that make them a better broker than me if their rental rates are 5 times as much? They're going to make a lot more money than me, but their overhead's going to be a lot higher. Same thing in LA when I lived in Los Angeles. Okay. So you can talk about how much money you're making or how much money you're keeping or how much tax you're paying, all those kind of things. You have to say, what is it? But if you get some other people in your business, they're going to tell you. So, like my mentor told me, look, you're going to starve for 18 months. You're going to starve.
Wow.
Okay. After that, you got a good chance to make 6 figures and maybe 7 figures.
Was
It's up to you.
was this in the while you were in the company or when you started your business?
When I first started in the business,
Mhm.
I mean, I had no clue. I made $12,000 my first year. I made 103 my second year.
Wow.
Okay. So literally 18 months I starved.
And then after that, the hard work.
Started paying off in years 4, 5, and 6, paid off more. In year 9, I did the biggest deal in the state, and that gave me the confidence. It gave me the cushion to go out and start my own, basically.
Mhm. How would you advise for people to find a mentor?
Talk to as many people as possible, shadow them, take them to coffee, take them to lunch, and trust your gut.
Mhm,
So I had no knowledge about real estate. So I went and met with a retail person, industrial person, apartment person, a raw ground person, an office person, a property management person. And I just, kind of talked to them all. And you can make great money in every one of them. Okay.
mhm,
There's good and bad for all. And I just kind of aligned myself and envisioned myself with the guy that was my mentor in the office area that I gravitated toward. And then again, as I told you, I studied every sales trainer and motivational speaker and things like that to try to learn as much as I could to
mhm,
differentiate myself from everybody else out there. I have about 200 hours of post grad to put it in perspective. I've got 3 real estate designations. There's not too many things. I've got just in negotiations alone over 100 hours of things that I've done.
mhm.
But it's really again listening to what's important if you want to excel, and it's different for every business.
Yeah,
But if you want to hone in, on that, that's something really important.
mhm. One thing I'm interested in is with education, because you educate yourself a lot. You really like to go and read books, you take classes and everything. How do you differentiate what is important to you and what is might just be garbage? Something that's not really gonna help you because there's a lot of different because I've talked with a lot of realtors and, like, the way they approach sales, it varies. Like, it varies even between, like, top realtors. I'll be talking with one guy, he's like, "I like to do it like this." The other guy likes to do it the complete opposite way.
Well, there's a lot of ways to be successful. I think only you can determine what's resonates with you to help you learn. Some people aren't good with numbers. That's fine. Hire somebody in finance, hire an accountant. Not
Mhm,
everybody's good with numbers. Not everybody's good in speaking. Well, go take Toastmasters and work on your speaking skills. I took an active listening course to work on my listening skills. All right. I was great in math and terrible at accounting. If I had to be an accountant, I'd be homeless.
mhm,
All right. Everybody's different. I'm not handy. If I had to do a handyman job, I'd be homeless.
mhm,
So finding out what you're passionate about and really evolving in those skills, really constantly learning those is going to differentiate yourself and not beating yourself up for the ones that you're not good at.
mhm. How do you advise, like, people like your son who's now 21? He's kind of now in college, just getting into the real world. How do you advise him to find his passions, what he's good at and what he's not?
That's a great question. So about 10 years ago, a best-selling book came out called Strength Finders 2.0 by Tom Rath. In the book, it gives you a code to take an online test that tells you your 5 passions in life. I've probably given out 200 copies of this book.
Mhm.
You take the test, gives you your 5 passions. You only read those 5 chapters. The whole gist is do what you're passionate about, delegate, and don't do everything else.
Mhm.
Okay. So again, with me, for years, I beat myself up because I wasn't handy or I was terrible in accounting instead of saying, screw that, hire it out and just focus on what you're good on.
Yeah.
Once you've read that and say, okay, keep shadowing people, keep going out and trying things, and you're going to find something that you get excited about. And the more you're excited about it, the more you're going to want to go learn. So when I study the market 3 hours a day, it's not a task. I love doing it.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah.
I love doing it. I love helping people. But if you said, "God, I hate to read. I don't wanna do that." Well, you're not gonna do it. It's as simple as that. If you told me, "Greg, go get a hammer and fix this wall over here," I'm gonna like, "Hell no, I'm not doing that." Okay? So that's really the long and short of it. We took 8 hours of psychological tests before my old company hired me. 8 hours. They
Really?
wanted to see if we could handle failure because so much of our business is psychology. You're going to get 9 no's probably for every yes. You might call 100 people and only 3 answer the phone. You may go knock on 100 doors and get it shut in your face 95 times. So
Mm.
you got to be able to handle failure. How thick is your skin? All right? Are you persistent? Are you dedicated? Are you a hard worker? They want to find out all those things, and they have all these weird questions that you never would think that would do that, that will do that. That's why some people are good in sales and some aren't. That's why some people are great at property management or great at analyzing numbers, but aren't on the front lines working, directly with the client.
Mhm.
Okay. And again, there's great money to be made in all these different areas of real estate. Property managers are crucial. I couldn't do that job at all.
Mm.
Really hard. Takes a lot of patience that I don't have. Okay,
Yeah.
on there. So finding those things that are good at, part of it's trial and error. I had one friend that failed at 7 sales job before he found a niche that he excelled in, and he ended up retiring as a vice president of a company. Okay, so there's no right or wrong, good or bad. You want to work with a big company or a little company? You want to wear a suit and tie every day? You want to be in the suburbs or downtown? Do you want to have to go in the office or not go in? Do you want to have a boss or not have a boss?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of things that come into play here. The more you can visualize what's important to you for your life, paint the picture,
Mhm.
the better chance it is of coming true.
Do you think everyone could succeed in sales? Is
No,
it
no.
it's like do you think there's a natural
Well, I think there's some natural if you're an outgoing person, but again, can you get better? Yes, but no, just like I said, not everybody can be an accountant.
Mhm.
I was the biggest flunk out class at Ohio State when I was there, and I squeaked by like this. So, how can you be great in math? I was very good at math. I just could not get it down.
Mm.
Okay. So, no, not everybody's going to be good in sales on there. Not everybody's going to be good at everything. Now, you will hear some people say for young people, do what makes you the most money for 10 years, then do something you're passionate about. And I can't argue with that. But can you live through 10 years of doing something you might not like very much? If your eye is on a long term prize, you probably can.
Mhm.
Okay. But I'm saying most people probably can't on there. That's why I like that book so much. And I have a book list of about 40 that I give out, but there's about a half a dozen that are real life changers.
Mhm. One thing I'm interested in is you're fairly successful. You have a kid that's basically almost fully grown up. You have a business that thrives. You have the house paid off, the car paid off. You could kind of do whatever you want. Like you said, you could go to Hawaii tomorrow. Or how do you motivate yourself now?
Well, it's more about the opportunity to help people that I'm fortunate enough to get introduced to. So if you say, "Hey, Greg, I've got this company. It's a friend of mine. They need help." I'm going to help them, whether it's a tiny company or a big company. So I get a lot of calls like that. And I'm very big about giving back. I think it's really important in your why to help other people. So one of my goals is to help everybody get a foundation for lifelong success. And
Mhm.
that's why I started speaking and teaching on financial literacy education and investment property acquisition. Because again, I started totally with nothing. I've got a lot of friends that have done very, very well. And, all those factors that we mentioned, your risk tolerance, your time horizon, how much you're investing, that sort of thing. But most people can't even get their credit card bills paid off or get their checking account straightened out or know the process of buying a house or renting out a spare room, house hacking as they call it, things like that. So there's so many different areas, but it's how bad you want it. So I can't teach you a work ethic, but I can
Mhm,
certainly teach you everything else that's going to give you the ability to be financially secure.
mhm. What do you think separates people with a good work ethic and a bad one? Is it just only goals, or is it something else maybe?
Well, attitude of gratitude, yearning to get better, not having a victim mentality. Now, a lot of that could be where you were raised, how you were raised. Were your parents successful or not? Were your parents savers or spenders? What kind of stress was there in the household? So, my dad left at 12. I didn't want to be a burden to my mom. I was the oldest. I worked 2 jobs through high school and college. I cleaned toilets. I scrubbed toilets. I mean, I did every menial labor job. I was a busboy. I was a babysitter. I was a pipe threader. I was a golf caddy. So the bottom line was I was not going to be a burden to my mom. That was first and foremost. So I had the work ethic. I don't think very many people do today. I think there's a lot of lazy people out there with a
Mhm,
victim mentality. I think the loans the government gave really made people even lazier. And
mhm.
then again, sitting at home for 2 years, they didn't really, they got out of the routine. So now it's like a kick in the face. Oh, prices are up. Oh, this is up. Oh, that's up. And oh, I got to get out of my parents' basement or whatever. Um, so people need to realize, look, nobody owes you anything in life. No one. But you have to get exposed to the opportunities,
Mhm,
educated in that area, and inspired to greatness. So that's one of the goals that I try to do. Expose people that there is so much opportunity out there in this world, whether you want to stay local or move somewhere else. To be inspired, the quicker you find out what you're passionate about, the more inspired you're going to be, and then educate yourself in that area. That may be 1, 3, 5 lifetime of learning if you want to, again, get up here. I mean, if you want to be a doctor, you're not quitting after a month. It might be 10 years of hard work
yeah,
on there. So the people that do the best are going to take what's necessary to do it. The rest of the people are going to bitch, moan, and whine and say, why don't I get it? Or raise the minimum wage, or whatever the case may be. Well, I don't care if minimum wage is $40. If they don't know the things we're talking about, they're still not going to have any money.
mhm, yeah. Um, for someone that's starting off, maybe, like, they just got out of college, they don't have maybe a lot of money, or maybe they don't have the connections, how would you recommend for them to find opportunity?
Okay, that's a great question. So, number one, when you don't have money, you obviously want to find an area that you can based off what your goals are. Number two is never have credit card debt. Always pay your bills off. Don't buy it if you can't afford it that month, and really differentiate between a want and a need. You need a couple nice outfits, not 10. You need a car, not necessarily a Mercedes.
Mhm,
All right. In every area of your life, you have to look at that. But the most important things is who you're hanging around. You can always find good time Joe to go have a beer with you 5 nights a week and you'll have nothing. Or you can hang around people that are either starting their own businesses or going places or learning different educational things about investing that they're going to be a star. So you want to hang around those mentally stimulating, uplifting, outgoing people. And obviously, who you marry will have the biggest effect on that. Who your relationships are with are going to have the biggest effect on that. Where you live. Are you in a town where there's opportunities? Well, here in Columbus, Ohio, there's phenomenal opportunities.
yeah,
And the cost of living is so much less than any bigger city. So much less.
yeah, compared to, like, San
Oh,
Francisco, yeah, I
yes.
mean,
Well, I think Columbus is the 14th or 15th biggest.
14th, yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, you go to Chicago, Philly, New York, San Francisco, LA, Miami, Atlanta. Oh my goodness, just so much more in all those areas. So opportunities abound. But I will give you a quick story. My younger sister moved to Paris at 26 years old.
Oh,
She
wow.
had no money. She had no job. She didn't speak French. She didn't have any contacts. She went.
Really?
She lived there poor for 7 years. She got a master's. She got in with a division of the UN called UNESCO, and she's been there over 25 years now. And she just got a big promotion, an assignment that she's ecstatic about. I'm so proud of her. So here's my little sister by herself, single woman, no money, no language, no context, said, you know what? She was living in Chicago after college. Nah, she took a bike trip through France, came back and told my mom she's moving. We're like, yeah, right. And she did it. So no one can tell you no if you want it bad enough. And she's living proof, and I'm living proof. When I left the beach in LA, people said, Greg, you are nuts. Why would you leave the beach in LA? Beautiful women, lots of opportunities, professional sports, everything at your fingertips. I had a gut feel here. I trusted my gut. I set a high goal. I gave it a timeline, and I did it. All right.
Mhm,
So hanging around for young people, setting a goal, doing the things like the charity organizations that I talked about, good people with good hearts will band together. Even if you don't have any money, you volunteer your time so you can help others in need. And you're going to meet those people. It's going to make you feel so good, no matter what it is, what area on there will really be good. And there's not one direction in Columbus and Central Ohio that isn't growing.
mhm,
That's the good part. You could move 20 miles in any direction, and chances are there's going to be an opportunity.
mhm, yeah. With, finding people kind of to connect with, people that are motivating, that are stimulating your mind, like, forcing you to think about these new opportunities, do you think it's mostly through charities? Is there other ways to meet them?
Well, meetup groups in something you're interested in. I mean, I played basketball, so I met a lot of guys playing basketball. I played golf.
Mhm,
Okay, alumni groups on there, but you could just be walking your dog at a park and strike up a conversation with someone. It's being open and outgoing and inquisitive.
mhm,
Every time I go meet somebody, I mean, I was at Ohio State for an event today. I spoke at one at Ohio State a week ago. I'm at a table with 6 total strangers. I'm asking every one of them, just being friendly. Where are you? What are you into? Whatever. And maybe there's an opportunity. You never know. Maybe there's an opportunity for you to help them.
mhm,
You never know.
and
Okay.
it's more of just active listening, kind.
It's active listening. It's really again, the Stephen Covey book is my favorite. Seek first to understand, then be understood. My doctor told me though something really important. Get out of your comfort zone. It's
Mhm,
very easy to sit in this chair and lay back and be comfortable. You got the clicker for your remote, watching the ball game. Get out of your comfort zone. Go do something you never thought you would do.
mhm.
So I've been doing an awful lot of that the last 15 years.
Yeah. How do you kind of what does your future look like from here? Is it more educational aspect? Is there ever, like, maybe you're gonna try to start a company that's similar to the one you worked at? What does it look like?
Well, I'll never retire. I know that. I'll just work when I want to. I've been traveling the world a lot. I've got 4 trips coming up this year. I've taken 3 already. This year, I hike a lot. I'm super active. I'm active with my son. I'm a sports nut, so I go to a lot of sporting events. I was at the Buckeye National Championship, which was phenomenal on there. Like I said, I read. I'm a voracious reader, and just giving and helping. My mother's 88 and sings in a church and helps a lot of people, donates a lot of her time. So I think the giving part of it, and for me, I know I'm blessed with a lot to be able to teach people, to help them to have a better life, and
Mhm,
getting them to understand if you do these right things, it's not rocket scientist, but it takes hard work. Are you willing to do that work? Are you willing to get out of your comfort zone? That may mean changing companies, changing careers, moving to a different city, to a different state, changing friends,
yeah,
all those things. And not everybody's willing to do that. But the ones that are, the sky's the limit.
mhm, yeah. What would be your recommendation for people trying to get into the tenant brokering space, that are considering it? They feel like they have it, what it takes. What would be your, like, kind of advice for them?
Well, number one, I'd have them come talk to me, and then I would introduce them to some other people around the country that I know, depending on where they live and what market they're into. And I would give them a fair assessment. There's a lot of tests out there that you can take that really tell you um, what's there. And really, it's doing an honest assessment of yourself. can you look long term? Because real estate is not a short term thing, as I said. And most people don't have the work ethic. I have a friend in Harrisburg, PA. He interviews people at 7:30 on Sunday morning. You want to see how bad you want it. You want to meet them on 7:30 Sunday morning? Most people blow it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good test.
It's a great business. It's a great industry. It's not for 99% of the people. That's
Mhm.
probably the best way to put it.
But then if you dare to be like the 1%, if you dare to like think bigger and you succeed, then it's an amazing career.
It's an amazing career. I mean, I'm so lucky that I lucked into it. It's not like there was a written plan, go to
Mhm.
school, get into that. Again, you could have given me 1,000 careers. That would have been that. So I thank my friend all the time that kind of made the suggestion. And then again, I trusted my gut when I came back here. And I think for everyone, if they really know themselves, trust in their gut with everybody. If I meet a person and I get a weird feel, it usually is true.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's very important to be able to read people. Again, I think we talked earlier, the psychology of, reading people and reading situations is very, very important.
Mhm. Yeah. And kind of as a closing question for the podcast, I would like to know what are your top 3 like book recommendations? You talked about a lot of books referred to a lot of them. What do you think are the 3 that summarize your points the best and give the most amount of knowledge?
Okay, so the Strength Finders 2.0 by Tom Rath, which helps you find your passions in life.
Yeah.
Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I must have listened to that in the car, books on tape 20 times. And I use that every single day of my life, everything that I've learned on that. And probably Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki that opens your mind that you're not going to get rich from a salary. You need to invest in understanding, again, risk tolerance and how investing works, whether it's in a business, a stock, or real estate. Those 3 books are life changers.
Mhm. Those books have I think what summarizes those because I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I haven't read the other 2, but from what you talk about it, I think the biggest idea is kind of thinking bigger with your life, where a lot of people, they think, "Okay, I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna get a safe salary," and then when they think about maybe, like, starting a business, maybe going into a more riskier career, they can't even think about that because all they've had in their mind is success is safety. When in reality, true success is in risk.
Getting out of your comfort zone, like I told you that my doctor said, school, normal high school, grade school, and most colleges are not preparing you to be an entrepreneur or an investor.
Mhm,
They're they're gearing you toward that 9 to 5 job and safety. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're going to be here. And when life is here, sometimes you're going to be having more stress. This way, nothing is guaranteed. You
mhm,
could be here,
yeah,
but you could also be there.
mhm,
So there's no right or wrong, good or bad with it. It's that. So it's definitely not for everybody. Um, not everybody wants to get out of their comfort level.
mhm,
But if you do, it gives you that opportunity. And if you're always learning and you yearn to learn and you yearn to be around other good people, that's why going to conferences, you just never know who you're going to meet
mhm,
on that might inspire you and expose you to other opportunities.
yeah. Would you recommend for young people going out of high school to go to college?
I think if you do that assessment and find out what your passions are, that's going to give you the answer to that. It's not for everybody.
Mhm,
Okay. Right now, you can be a welder or an HVAC tech or an electrician or a plumber or a truck driver for that matter and make $100,000 a year. It doesn't hurt. It's a good fallback. The biggest thing college taught me was the discipline of getting through those 4 years. 8 o'clock classes on West Campus when it's freezing cold in the winter. Discipline, getting through it. Do I use much stuff that I did on a daily basis there? Not really. If you're an accountant or an engineer or a doctor, without a doubt.
yeah,
But for a general salesperson, no, your people skills and your discipline is going to be much different. So it really is going to, again, depend on the career that you're wanting to go to. But school is very, very expensive.
mhm,
And it's absurd, really, how expensive it is.
yeah,
There's other trainings and things you can do. The Dale Carnegie sales course I took was much more valuable. at a fraction of the cost. Okay, some of the books I recommend, you can get them free at the public library,
Yeah.
right? You could read these 20 books and read one a week, and in 6 months, you're a new person. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really of how bad do you want it. If I said, here's 20 books to read, only 1 in 10 may do that. But the one that does it, chances are they're going to be up here.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about your podcast? What's the plan with that? Is that an educational podcast kind of for financial literacy? Is it more with the commercial real estate space?
So, yes, I'm starting my own podcast called Tenant Talks. So, we're going to talk to a lot of my past clients to understand their perspective on, how was the process? What was good? What was bad? What did they need to learn? What was a surprise to them? And again, depends on when they did it with what's going on in the market. Then we're going to talk to other real estate experts in every niche. So we're going to talk to an apartment broker, an industrial broker, a retail broker, another office broker to get their perspectives of what's going on, as well as investments. And then we'll talk about financial literacy and investment properties. So the goal is to educate the public
Mm.
to be able to help them make informed decisions on their own real estate or their investment properties for their own companies or for their investment properties on there. I don't think there's anybody else that's doing it really from that perspective. I've been a guest on a lot of different podcasts over the years since they've been out, but someone just recently said, "Hey, this is something you ought to be doing." I'd much rather do a seminar face to face. That's where I draw my energy when I see people. So I've been very against doing online courses and webinars and that. I really don't like that. But I know that sometimes it's hard to get in front of people in Timbuktu, Iowa, which I've spoken 20 some states around the country. So it's not always easy to get out to these other places. So this will be a way to educate a lot bigger audience.
Yeah, I think that's a really good ending to the podcast with you continuously going out of your comfort zone, going after the unknown, jumping in even into this online world that you aren't familiar with, and I think it's a really good representation of a lot of what you shared today, which is kind of to be successful. It's not just being in the comfort zone of what you already know, but it's going into that unknown and seeing what may happen.
Without a doubt. Every day in my life is an unknown. You may think it's going okay. I got 4 appointments today. 2 of them get canceled. This one gets moved. This guy was a 10-minute meeting, turned out to be a 3-hour meeting. You don't know. You just you don't know. But I like that. It definitely motivates you. But yeah, Schenk Training, SCHENK Training, and schenkcompany.com is my main company website. But yes, I'm very excited about it. And again, I've been so blessed. Some of the clients that I'm working with now and have worked with have brought me a lot of joy and some really cool things that I've helped have happen not only here but around the country.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. We'll link all of your information down below in the description. Greg, I really thank you for coming on and sharing all your insight.
Well, thank you so much for having me.